On my wedding day, my stepsister claimed my fiancé had been secretly texting her, saying he didn't love me and begging her to run away with him. Everyone expected me to panic and call it off. I didn't cry. I did this. 1 week later, everything collapsed. I'm 25, and I recently married my boyfriend of almost 7 years. His name is Ethan. He's 25 too. I also have a 24-year-old stepsister named Brooke. Our parents got married when I was 9 and she was 8. My mom married her dad. By that point, they'd already been dating for almost 3 years, so it didn't feel sudden. We were already used to seeing each other all the time. Technically, I met Brooke when I was 6 and she was 5. Back then, whenever she and her dad came over, I would get embarrassingly excited. I grew up in a neighborhood with almost no kids my age, so every visit from her felt like a little holiday. We'd tear around the backyard, invent dumb games, whisper secrets that weren't really secrets at all. It was easy and light in the way only childhood friendships are. As we got older, we stayed close. All through middle school, I thought of her as my best friend. High school is where everything tilted. And of course, it tilted because of a boy. Classic. Before I get into that, it probably helps to explain the situation with my biological father. My mom was pregnant with me when my father cheated on her with her friend. When he found out about the pregnancy, he decided he didn't want to be a dad. After I was born, he signed away his parental rights and walked out of our lives. He never married the woman he cheated with. He just disappeared. My grandparents on my mom's side are pretty well off. Because of that, my mom chose not to chase him for child support. She didn't want his money, didn't want to deal with him, didn't want legal drama. She just wanted him gone. So I never met him. I don't know what he looks like now, where he lives, whether he has other kids. My stepdad, Brooke's dad, is the only father I really know. Brooke's mom died when Brooke was very young. She had multiple health issues, and the pregnancy made everything worse. After that, my mom had full custody of me, and Brooke's dad had full custody of Brooke. When our parents started dating and eventually moved in together, Brooke and I went from playdate friends to girls sharing the same house. She was almost exactly my age, and for a lonely only child, that felt like winning the lottery. Suddenly, I had a sister to share a room with, borrow clothes from, complain about homework with. We stayed close all the way until high school. Brooke had started school a year early, so even though she was technically a year younger, we were in the same grade. We started high school together. That was when Ethan walked into our lives. His family moved to our town, and he arrived as the new kid. Kind eyes, easy smile, and the kind of boy who remembers little things you say and brings them up later. He was funny and thoughtful, and just naturally attentive in a way that made my stomach flip. I noticed him. So did Brooke. We'd both had boyfriends before, but those were middle school things, awkward, unserious, more about texting than talking. What we felt for Ethan didn't feel like that. I could tell she liked him. She could tell I liked him. It was obvious. So I talked to her. We sat down one night and made a pact. We agreed that neither of us would try to pursue Ethan. No flirting, no asking him out, no secret texting. It sounds dramatic, but we were so sure our relationship as sisters was more important than any crush. We didn't want some boy to come between us. We told ourselves it wasn't worth it. We'd just be his friends. That was the responsible, mature, sisterly thing to do. We ended up having a lot of classes with him. The three of us became close friends. The more time I spent with Ethan, the worse my crush got. He was exactly the kind of person I had always hoped I'd meet, but I remembered the pact. So whenever he flirted with me, I shut it down gently. I didn't flirt back, even when he practically handed me chances on a silver platter. If he accidentally brushed my hand, I pulled away like I didn't notice. If he made a joke that was clearly aimed at me, I would laugh, but I'd keep things neutral. At home, Ethan's name was practically banned. We never discussed him, not once. It was like we'd both silently agreed that admitting our feelings out loud would blow everything up. This dance went on for years. By senior year, the prom was coming up, and everyone was pairing off. People were planning limo groups, ditch day trips, after parties. A guy I liked in a casual way was circling around the idea of asking me, and I was ready to say yes. Not because I didn't care about Ethan, but because I was trying to live like none of that mattered. That's when Ethan pulled me aside. He told me Brooke had asked him to prom, and that she'd confessed she wanted to be more than friends. I remember the feeling in my chest like someone had dropped a stone in there. She was the one who had pushed so hard for our agreement. She was the one who insisted we never cross that line. I'd spent years swallowing my feelings, rejecting Ethan's flirting as politely as I could, making sure I never gave him any signal he could misinterpret. Meanwhile, she'd gone behind my back and done exactly what she swore we wouldn't do. But Ethan wasn't done talking. He told me he had turned her down. He said he had always seen Brooke as just a friend, even though he knew she liked him that way. He told me she'd been flirting with him for a long time, especially when they were alone, and he'd never encouraged it. He'd tried to keep clear boundaries because he didn't want to hurt anyone. Then he told me the reason. He was in love with me. He said he had been for years. He also admitted he had no idea why I kept pushing him away. From his point of view, he'd been dropping hints and trying to get closer, and I just kept shutting him down. He said he was confused and starting to wonder if he should give up and move on. Senior year was almost over. We were both about to leave for college. He told me he needed clarity. Either there was something between us and we'd do something about it, or there wasn't and he'd ask someone else to prom and stop waiting for me. He told me I had to choose. Tell him how I really felt, or tell him I didn't feel the same. I told him I needed a day. I needed time to think, to talk to Brooke, to figure out what was left between us before I did something I couldn't take back. That afternoon, I felt physically sick. I skipped my last few classes and went home early. I didn't want to sit next to Brooke on the bus with this hanging in the air. I waited for her in our room. When she got home, she acted completely normal. No mention of Ethan, no mention of prom, no strange behavior. Just a regular afternoon. It was like she thought none of it would ever reach me. I brought it up. I asked if it was true that she'd asked Ethan to prom and told him she had feelings for him. She got defensive immediately. She told me it was none of my business, that whatever was going on between her and Ethan was between them, not me, but that wasn't true. It was my business, because she was the one who had forced the promise in the first place. She was the one who made it such a big deal that we both stay away from him. I'd been carefully pushing down everything I felt for years to protect her, and she hadn't even tried to do the same for me. We had a huge fight. Words we couldn't take back were said. She finally admitted that she had made that pact partly to protect my feelings, but mostly because she was convinced that if Ethan ever had to choose between us, he would choose her. In her mind, she was the obvious pick. So if I ended up dating him, that would somehow be unfair. Hearing that made something crack. It wasn't just that she'd broken our agreement. It was the way she believed she was entitled to him and that my feelings were somehow less real or less important. The next day, I told Ethan everything. I told him about the promise, about all the times I'd deliberately shut him down, about how guilty and torn I'd been. I told him how hurt I was by what Brooke had done and what she'd said to me. He listened. He didn't pressure me. He just asked what I wanted. And for once, I didn't think about what Brooke would say. I didn't think about our pact or about being the good daughter who always keeps the peace. I told him I loved him. We started dating. That was 7 years ago. 7 really good years. I don't regret that decision for a second, but it was the end of my relationship with Brooke. We still lived in the same house, but she moved into the basement so she wouldn't have to share a room with me anymore. Our parents tried to get us to explain what had happened. Neither of us ever told them. From their point of view, one day their daughters were inseparable, and the next we were strangers. Eventually, everyone just adjusted. Ethan and I went to the same college. Brooke chose a school across the country. I hardly saw her for years. At holidays and big family events, we were polite but distant. We could talk about safe topics like work or classes or random family news, but it never went deeper than that. When we were kids, we used to stay up late and talk about being each other's maids of honor someday. In reality, we turned into people who made small talk over the dessert table. A couple of years ago, Brooke announced she was engaged to her college boyfriend. I congratulated her. She invited me to the wedding, and I went. I chose not to bring Ethan as my +1. Even though he and I had already been together for a long time, I felt like showing up at her wedding with him would be rubbing salt into old wounds. It was her day, and even if she acted like she was over it, I didn't want Ethan's presence to hang over the whole thing like a cloud. At the reception, she noticed he wasn't there. She made a point of telling me I could have brought Ethan, that she was totally over everything, and it was all in the past. I believed her at the time. Looking back, I shouldn't have. About 8 months ago, Ethan proposed. He'd just gotten a promotion at work. I had left my old job to join my friend's startup. It felt like we were both stepping into a new phase of our lives at the same time. I said yes. We planned a small, relaxed wedding at a countryside hotel. Our parents, my bridesmaids, his groomsmen, and a few close relatives arrived 2 days before the ceremony. Other guests came either the day before or the morning of. Brooke and her husband were supposed to arrive the morning of the wedding. Instead, they checked in a day early. I remember hearing about it and assuming it was just a mix-up with the dates. I didn't think anything of it. I had 1,000 details swirling in my head. Seating charts, timelines, hair appointments. I didn't have the energy to be suspicious about a check-in time. On the morning of the wedding, my bridesmaids and my mom were in my room helping me get ready. Brooke drifted around the area a lot, even though she wasn't a bridesmaid and didn't have any actual tasks. Everyone else had a role. My bridesmaids were running errands and checking details. My mom was everywhere at once. People were busy, but Brooke just hovered nearby. It was strange, but I shoved that feeling aside. I was too nervous about everything else. Eventually, my dress, hair, and makeup were all done. My bridesmaids and my mom left to change into their outfits before the ceremony. We still had about an hour before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. I couldn't go down to the lobby or wander around the property. I didn't want anyone seeing my dress early, so I decided to walk slowly up and down the hallway outside my room, just to burn off some of the nervous energy. That's when Brooke stopped me. She said she needed to talk and that it was really important. Given the state of our relationship, that alone was weird. We weren't close. We barely shared anything more personal than, "How's work?" But we were in a public corridor of a hotel full of people who loved me. I felt safe enough to hear her out. So I listened. She started by telling me that coming to the hotel a day earlier than planned wasn't an accident. She'd done it on purpose, because Ethan had asked her to. According to her, he had contacted her about 2 weeks before the wedding. She said he told her he was having second thoughts about marrying me, that he claimed he didn't love me anymore, that he had realized he was actually in love with her instead. She said they'd been talking behind my back and that he had asked her to arrive early so they could run away together. Then she added that the whole time she'd been at the hotel, Ethan had been pressuring her to go through with this plan, that he was too scared to break up with me himself because he thought I might react badly, and he didn't want to be around when that happened or take responsibility for it. Brooke cast herself as the reluctant hero in this story. She told me she just couldn't bring herself to hurt me that way, so she had decided to come clean. She said she was telling me all of this because she cared about me and my future, and she chose to do it 1 hour before my wedding. As she spoke, I felt this strange, icy calm settle over me. I trusted Ethan. He's never been secretive or manipulative. He doesn't play games. If he had doubts, he would have told me, and the idea that he was secretly trying to run away with my stepsister, someone he barely talks to, just didn't fit anything I knew about him. On top of that, the logistics of her story made no sense. There had been no hint, no change in his behavior, nothing that lined up with what she was describing. The whole thing sounded like a bad script she'd written in her head. All I could see was that she was trying to blow up my wedding at the very last possible second I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I decided to turn it around. Right there in the hallway, in my wedding dress, I took out my phone. I don't have her husband's number saved, but I do follow him on Instagram, so I opened the app and started a video call. I angled the phone so she couldn't see the screen. She clearly thought I was calling Ethan. My voice shook on purpose. I repeated her entire story out loud, word for word, to the person on the other end of the call. I said Ethan had supposedly confessed he was in love with her, that he'd asked her to run away with him, that he was pressuring her, that she'd come early because of him. Then I asked, "Is that true?" Brooke stood there, watching me, probably thinking she had succeeded. She must have believed I was about to dump Ethan right then and there. Her husband answered the call. Since she couldn't see the screen, she didn't realize who it was. At first, I finished repeating everything she said, then I put the phone on speaker. Her husband sounded shocked and angry. He asked me to go over it again. I did, slowly. Every detail. Then he said he was coming back to his room immediately. He said Brooke's name, and that was when she finally understood who was on the other end of the call, not Ethan. Her husband. She panicked. She started yelling at me, accusing me of trying to destroy her marriage, crying that I was doing this just to hurt her, that I wanted to ruin her life. I told her calmly that I had only done to her what she had just tried to do to me. Then I walked away and went back to my room. I told my bridesmaids what had happened and asked them to keep her away from the ceremony and reception. I didn't want her anywhere near that day if I could help it. In the end, I didn't have to worry. The ceremony went beautifully. There were no interruptions, no dramatic scenes, no unexpected speeches. Brooke didn't show up. I assume she spent that time fighting with her husband. At some point during the wedding, they checked out of the hotel and left. Only my parents seemed to notice she was missing. They asked where she was. I told them I'd explain later. It was my wedding day. I didn't want to stand around defending myself against someone who wasn't even there. After the chaos of the wedding died down, a week or so passed. Ethan and I were settling into married life, opening gifts, writing thank you cards, talking about everything that had happened. We both agreed that Brooke's stunt had been outrageous, but we were trying to put it behind us. Then my mom and stepdad called. They sounded upset. They told us that Brooke and her husband were separating. Her husband had called them, shouting on the phone, demanding that they come pick her up because she refused to leave his house. He told them that if she didn't go willingly, he would call the police and have her removed. So my parents drove over and brought her back to their place. That's when the full story came out. Her husband told them that he'd known for a long time that Brooke still had some kind of twisted obsession with Ethan. She had been telling her friends things like, "I should have ended up with him," and "It's not fair she got him instead of me." Her friends apparently fueled this, encouraging her to hold on to the idea that she and Ethan were meant to be. He'd tried to ignore it for a while, but when she tried to sabotage my wedding by inventing a story about Ethan wanting to run away with her, that was the last straw. He couldn't pretend anymore that it was just a silly fantasy she kept in her head. She was willing to act on it and hurt other people. He decided he wanted a divorce. When my parents finished relaying this, I expected them to be angry at Brooke. I thought they'd finally see how deep her jealousy went. Instead, they turned it on me. They said that yes, Brooke had behaved badly, but I should never have called her husband. In their eyes, I had humiliated her and destroyed her marriage by dragging him into it. They insisted that if I had just confronted Ethan privately, everything would have stayed contained. They wanted me to apologize to Brooke. When I refused, they stopped talking to me. They shut me out because I wouldn't say sorry for exposing a lie she told on my wedding day. Some of our mutual friends took her side too. They said things like, "Maybe Brooke acted crazy, but you escalated it," and "You could have handled it differently if you really cared about family." I was shaken. I knew in my gut that what I'd done was fair, but when enough people tell you you're cruel, it starts to sink in. So I wrote about the situation online, anonymously, and read what strangers had to say. That changed everything. People who didn't know me or Brooke at all were blunt in a way my family wasn't. They pointed out that Brooke hadn't just crossed a line. She'd sprinted past it. She had tried to wreck the most important day of my life with a full-blown lie. All I'd done was tell the truth to someone who deserved to hear it. Seeing that spelled out over and over helped something click in my head. I realized that as long as I stayed in constant contact with my parents and the people defending Brooke, they would keep pressuring me to fix things in the one way that protected her and hurt me. By apologizing and taking the blame, I didn't want to spend years being emotionally browbeaten into saying I was wrong for defending my own wedding. So I pulled back. I stopped trying to reach out. If my parents wanted space, I would give them space. If friends had already decided I was the villain, I wasn't going to burn energy trying to convince them otherwise. Anyone who looked at what happened and still thought I was the main problem wasn't really on my side to begin with. Brooke is the one who tried to blow up my marriage before it even officially started. If anyone owed anyone an apology, it was her. Ethan and I decided to go on a second little honeymoon, just a short trip to unwind and clear our heads. By then, almost 2 weeks had passed since the wedding. I still hadn't spoken to my parents. Losing those friendships hurt, but not in a way that surprised me. I'd always felt a kind of distance with a lot of them. What hurt more was not talking to my parents. I kept catching myself reaching for my phone to text my mom something small and stupid, or to call my stepdad and tell him about the trip we were planning. Every time, I had to remind myself that I couldn't. They'd chosen to cut me off rather than admit Brooke had been out of line. Meanwhile, I was sure Brooke was living with them, telling her version of the story on repeat, twisting it in ways that made her look like the wounded one and me like some heartless monster. I imagined her painting herself as the abandoned daughter whose sister stole her chance at happiness. By the time we came back from the trip, I was almost certain my parents would hate me. I could understand my stepdad's instinct to protect Brooke. She's his biological child. I'm not. Of course, he would lean toward her side at first. My mom was harder to forgive. She knows what betrayal looks like. She lived it when my father cheated on her with her friend. She knows what it feels like when someone goes after your partner and tries to blow up your relationship because they want what you have. Out of everyone in the world, she should have been the one to understand why what Brooke did hurt so much. If, even after all of that, my mom was still choosing to see me as the problem, I honestly didn't know what else I could do. We went on our second honeymoon anyway. We called it the honeymoon again. I tried to focus on Ethan, on us, on the fact that we were finally married after everything we'd been through. On the third day of that trip, my mom sent me a message. I saw the notification on my phone. I didn't open it. I made a very deliberate decision. I didn't want to risk destroying whatever peace we'd managed to carve out for ourselves on that trip. If the message was cruel or full of accusations, I didn't want to spend the rest of the vacation crying in a hotel room, so I decided to wait. If another emotional blow was coming, it could land after we got home. When the trip ended and we finally walked back into our apartment, I sat on the couch, took a breath, and opened her message. She told me that she and my stepdad had let Brooke stay with them for a few days after the separation. Those few days had turned into something unbearable. Brooke wouldn't stop talking about me. She went on, trash-talking me, painting herself as the victim, retelling her distorted version of events. She refused to accept any responsibility. My mom said it was constant, exhausting, and ugly. At some point, they both finally snapped out of whatever fog they'd been in. They realized that Brooke really had tried to sabotage my wedding, that she'd gone to the hotel early with the intention of carrying out this plan to destroy my marriage before it even began. They realized I hadn't exaggerated anything. They kicked her out. In the message, my mom admitted that when everything first blew up, Brooke's collapsing marriage had felt like the more urgent crisis. They were worried about her emotional state, scared of what she might do, and completely overwhelmed. In that panic, they made very bad choices, defending her at my expense, demanding that I apologize, shutting me out when I refused. Now, with some distance, they could see how unfair that was. She said they wanted to make things right. She asked if Ethan and I would come over for dinner so they could apologize properly and try to rebuild our relationship. Reading that, I felt relief and a kind of cautious hope. I showed Ethan the message, and we agreed to go. I don't think everything will magically go back to how it used to be, but it feels like the first real step in that direction, so that's where things stand now. My jealous stepsister tried to ruin my wedding by claiming my fiancé wanted to run away with her. I told the truth to her husband. Her marriage exploded, my parents blamed me, and for a while it felt like I had lost half my support system overnight. Then they saw what she was really like when the spotlight wasn't on me, and now they're the ones reaching out with an apology. I stood up for myself and for my relationship. I refused to let a lie rewrite my life, even if it meant being painted as the bad guy for a while. And even now, with things slowly getting better, I still catch myself wondering, did I go too far? Or did I just finally give Brooke the consequences she'd spent years working so hard to avoid? If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with what you think down below.